Former President Donald Trump is on tour again, and in his recent speech, he said that we should be more kind to each other. I'm just kidding. He said we should ban all of electric cars, and obviously I have a little bit of a problem with that, but he did mention one thing that I think we should take seriously and talk about. And to help me do that, the host of the State of Charge YouTube channel, Tom Moloughney, will be here to make America charge again. And as always, we're going to take questions from the live audience, and we're going to start right now. Welcome to E4 Electric, where I reveal the truth behind the electric car headlines, and if you like either one of them, the electric cars or the truth, we got both. So don't forget to click on that subscribe button that kind of looks like this. Not as cute, but still very usable. And the bell notification icon so you don't miss anything moving forward. Okay, first things first. Please don't go crazy in the chat about this. We're not discussing politics. I'm simply using what he said as something that we should talk about. And if you watch my channel for a while now, you probably know that I am an independent. Not just in politics, but, for example, in electric cars. Which means that I don't believe that in any of the instances, any party is 100% right or wrong. No person is 100% right or 100% wrong, and I don't think that's the case here. So that's what we're going to talk about. So please, I know we're talking about trigger wars here, but just contain yourself, because otherwise my producer AJ will ban you from the chat room and the channel. And of course, I can't wait to talk to Tom Moloughney, who will be here in just a second. But first, let's talk about this. Now, I'll show you the clip about what Donald Trump said. And before we get to what I actually want to talk about, there are a few things that he said that were, the bullshit. So let's get that out of the way, and then we'll get to the meat and bones of this, and Tom will jump in. So here's what he said last week.
When I was in office, gas was $1.87 a gallon. And we weren't talking about going to all electric cars, which are twice as expensive. I mean,
okay, so first of all, we were talking about electric cars. As a matter of fact, I might have a clip of someone talking about electric cars who looks amazingly similar to him. But also, electric cars were actually never twice as expensive. However, it is something that people think about because the electric cars that everybody wants to talk about are quite expensive. Tesla Model S Plaid, Lucid Air, they are very, very expensive. However, there are plenty of gas cars that are just as expensive, but this is something we should definitely mention, that the conversation started before that. But let's keep going.
Mine wanted to do something for the environment. He went out and bought a electric car.
Now, I gotta say that it's actually nice to hear that both sides do believe that electric cars is something that you do for the environment. Now, I have an admission to make, a confession, I guess. When I bought my very first Tesla back in 2012, it wasn't to save the environment. I actually wanted us to be independent from oil, which I guess this year became a big deal, and people, I think, realize that. So it's good to hear. But let's keep going.
And he made a certain trip. I won't say from where. Kentucky. I won't say from where. And he's a good person. He wants to do what's well. Now he understands. Not so good. And he bought an electric car, and he made the trip often from Kentucky to Washington, and he made it, and he'd drive down and put the car away and drive back. He was getting like 38 miles a gallon, and it was fine. And then he goes to hybrids and all the other things they can do. But he...
All right, so that's another thing. First of all, I think it was stupid of EPA or anybody to even talk about MPG, which is miles per gallon, when it comes to electric cars. That's just stupid. We should never done it. I understand they have a reason for their calculations, but should never done it. Now, but even with the MPG ratings that EPA has, by far the worst electric car in terms of consumption and efficiency, I believe it's Audi e-tron, and it's nowhere near 38 miles per gallon. I think it's around 50 or 40 something. So that's already not exactly true. But after that, he did mention something that I want to talk about, and I think it's important. And I'll play you the rest of the clip, but before that, a quick reminder that this video is brought to you by Flow. If you're looking for one of the most elegant designs for your home charger, the Flow Home X5 was made for you, featuring beautiful, sturdy 100% aluminum casing. Get your exclusive discount in the description of this video. And by NeoCharge, you can charge 2 cars at the same time without spending a ton of money on rewiring your home. All you need is the smart splitter from NeoCharge. Get one today and use the discount code in the description of this video. All right, so let's get to the most important point of his speech. Like I said, think what you want about Donald Trump, but he does, whether you like it or don't like it, reflect a good portion of our population's opinion. And this is where we should pay attention. So here we go.
Wanted to go all electric because he wants to save our country, wants to save the atmosphere. And he called me, he said, I'm exhausted. Why? He said, this damn trip took me forever. I'd drive for 2 hours and then I'd have to have my car charged. And in 2 cases, I couldn't find a place to charge it, but even if I could, it took me more time to charge the damn car than I could spend in it driving. He said, it took me 2.5 times. Please, please, let's get rid of this stuff.
Okay, so now, obviously he's exaggerating a little, as always, but he does bring a good point, because let's be honest, right? Let's just be honest here. The biggest issues that I think a good amount of the population still has is the long distance charging. But before that, I think I promised I'm going to play you a clip of Trump, and this is the clip from a debate with Joe Biden from the election. Remember how he said that he just doesn't like electric cars? So let me play you a clip that you might find interesting. So let's do that.
And I'm okay with electric cars, too. I think I'm all for electric cars. I've given big incentives for electric cars.
All right. Now, of course, if you know anything about the incentives for electric cars, that was actually during the Obama administration, and it was started with during George W. Bush administration. So it's actually one of those beautiful collabs between the 2 administrations that actually produced the EV tax, which by the way is pretty much being wiped out. Oh, one thing I didn't mention is that if this live stream abruptly ends, it's because we are having rolling blackouts here in California because. Somehow we still want to only sell electric cars by 2035, but every time it's a little hot outside, our entire infrastructure craps out and we have to have rolling blackouts. But there's a whole point for a different day. Now, by the way, Elon Musk, and I think this whole thing that Trump's talking about electric cars, it's because of a bit of a beef that they're having with Elon Musk. Elon Musk was actually one of Trump's advisors in the beginning of Trump's administration, and he ended up quitting when Trump withdrew from the Paris Agreement, and ever since they've been going back and forth. Now, another thing that has happened during Trump's administration was the Lordstown Motors was formed as they ended up purchasing the plant from General Motors. Now, Trump was really big about not basically taking jobs out of good auto manufacturing and having it somewhere else. And so when GM was closing their factory, they ended up actually selling it to this new company, Lordstown Motors. And Trump actually hosted them at the White House and said a lot of nice things about electric cars. I think he forgot to mention that we should get rid of them, but it was a good meeting. And I just interviewed that's the previous CEO right there next to Trump, Steve Burns. He's been on my show a couple of times, but I had the current CEO of Lordstown Motors as well a couple of weeks ago, and it does look like they're going in production. So that's really cool. But it was a great deal for GM because it cost them less money to actually invest essentially in Lordstown than to decommission the plant. So that was a good deal for everybody. Trump looked good, GM looked good, the new company looked good, so it was a win for everybody. So But nevertheless, my point is that long distance charging is a problem. Even when I bought my very first Tesla in 2012, one of a million questions people could have asked about is people always asked, Alex, but what about going to Los Angeles? And that was and that's still the question even today. So, and that's very unfortunate. That of course, the question shifted from can you to how much time you're going to spend charging. And that's where even I have a problem with it, because when I moved to Sacramento and I knew I would be going back and forth between Sacramento and Silicon Valley, I ended up buying a Chevy Volt, which was a plug-in hybrid, and a lot of people gave me crap, and I said, I'm sorry, I care about the environment 90% of the time, but another 10% of the time, I care about my time. So when I go to the Bay Area, instead of 2 hours, now it's 2 hours and 45 minutes, because charging Tesla at that time was a little bit longer. If I go to Los Angeles, I would usually make it by 1 o'clock, because you kind of want to come in a little bit later so there's no traffic. But then with all the charging, instead of 1 o'clock, all of a sudden you come in at 3 o'clock sometimes. Sometimes there would be lines at the superchargers at that time, and that still is a problem here and there. So I said, I'm sorry, sometimes I just need to use a little bit of gas because I got to get to places and I still have to live my life. Just like my delivery trucks that are delivering my stuff from Amazon, they right now run on gas, and the planes that I fly. So you just can't switch all the way. However, I believe there is a solution. And it is something that for some reason a lot of people are resisting, but it is a battery swap. And the company that has done it the best is NIO. Unfortunately, just in China, but they have over 200, I believe, swapping stations, and they're now building them in Europe as they're expanding in Europe. The beauty of the battery swap is that you can swap your battery faster than you can fuel a gas car. And that is something that I believe holding a lot of people back, and just generally holding electric cars from being better than gas cars in every single way, which I think is very important when you're introducing a new product and a new concept to the market. So not only that, you can also change the sizes of the battery. So for example, if you're just driving around and it's your everyday commute, you can have a small battery where you need only maybe 50 miles of range. But if you want to go on a family vacation to, let's say, Los Angeles, you can put a bigger battery in, and of course pay a little bit more, but nevertheless you can leverage that. And another thing that people are afraid of, battery degradation. Well, if it's not your battery, you don't have to care. Now, there's another company, Ample in San Francisco, that is doing the same thing. They actually have, I did a report, this is actually me filming. I did a report on them last year. They are doing it even better than NIO, I think, because they have 6 modules, battery modules, and you can only replace 1 or 2 or 3. You can leave all of them in or just one of them in. And I think this is a much, much better way of doing it. Now, CATL has launched very similar type of a battery. As a matter of fact, they already have a deal to produce one of the cars that are going to be running on the CATL technology. So this is kind of happening. And let's not forget who did this first, right? Let's not forget that actually Tesla was the first brand who did it. They built a battery swapping station between here and Los Angeles. I was there. It was great. They made a big deal with this video, and then all of a sudden one day they decommissioned that station, and I think it's a shame. Now, there are quite a few things that people sort of why they resist. And I can see that Jay Ramirez is asking the question. He's saying, are there enough batteries to go around to do swaps? So don't forget, if you do it right, you don't have to replace an entire battery. You can replace one small piece of the battery. As a matter of fact, the car will drive off with half of the battery it normally would have. So I can argue you might even have less batteries needed. However, here's the thing. This is where I don't like where the conversation is going, and I know Tom will jump right in on this one pretty soon. I don't care how things are going to be invented and invested to by multi-billion-dollar companies. I care what's good for the consumer. In the last 10 years, Tesla and many other companies have accomplished a lot of things that we thought weren't possible. So you know what? Get this one done. I care what's good for the consumer. I care what's good for the electric car adoption, and you'll just have to figure it out. And don't forget, these modular batteries will not to be replaced fully. As a matter of fact, instead of, all of these Teslas and ID4s driving with 80 kilowatt hour battery, which none of us need on a daily basis, really pretty much none, they will be driving with just one module of 20 kilowatt hour battery. So 60 kilowatts over there are going to be stashed somewhere in those swapping stations, helping other cars, and those will be faster to charge. Now, I know Tom has something to say about this, and that's why I've had he is pretty much the best charging expert in the industry. So let's have him join. And Tom, welcome to the channel. As always, it's good to have you. I know before I even ask you questions, I'm sure you have many things to say about what I just talked about. So I'll give you the floor right now.
Okay, well, I'm not dead set against battery swap. I've done it in China with Neo, and it actually worked really well there. I'm just, there's a lot of problems with battery swap, and your thought process as far as you'll need less batteries is completely wrong. That's one thing I'll say is completely wrong.
Are you challenging me on math? Okay,
all right. You will need a lot more batteries because at any given time, all of these battery swap centers have to have dozens of extra packs sitting there and recharging while all the cars have batteries in them because they're driving around. And now you're saying, everybody's so stressed out about range, and you're thinking that people are going to be okay with a little 10 or 20 kilowatt hour battery pack, even though that they can go get another battery when they need it. They're not going to want to have to think about that. And if they suddenly need to go far, they don't want to have to drive to a battery swap station that's 20 minutes away, wait online because there's 6 other EVs in front of them to get 3 more modules added. They would just want to have their car ready to go all the time.
Well, hold on. Now, you're making a lot of assumptions, I think, here. First of all, you're making the same argument that people who, that Trump was talking about making, basically saying, oh, there's charging stations, they're so far away, 20 minutes away, who wants to do that? Well, build the infrastructure where they're not 20 minutes away. There will be battery swap stations, just as many of them as gas stations, and you just drive in there and they're not 20 minutes away. They're like a minute away. And yes, you drive out of the house and realize that today is the only day out of the entire week or maybe a month where you actually need a bigger battery. So instead of charging it, you just go and get 2 or 3 modules. It takes 1 minute. You don't have to get out of the car, unlike on the gas pump, and off you go. And mathematically, if you think about it, there will be more batteries stashed at those charging stations than in cars. So you won't technically need to make more batteries.
Well, I do think you will need to make more batteries, Alex, but those batteries could be put to use. There is an advantage to this. These battery swap stations could also be using the batteries that are waiting for other cars to come as stationary energy storage. They could be actually helping the grid if we get to a point where you're saying there's, battery swap stations everywhere. If they're 1 minute away, don't forget, you have to have so many of these out there and all of them are going to have to be filled with batteries. You could use them. I'm not convinced that the American public is going to want to lease batteries, that they're going to want to have a battery put in their car that they spent money on that might be old and degraded. Now, I know you can swap it and get a new one, but with how fast charging is becoming, if all EVs took, if it was an hour or 2 hours to charge an EV on a road trip, then, absolutely. But we're getting to the point now where it's minutes. The Lucid Air, I replaced 200 miles of driving range in 12 minutes on a Lucid Air.
Tom, hold on a second. I got to stop you. There's just too many things that you're saying kind of one by one. First of all, I think there's nothing wrong with replacing gas stations with battery swapping stations. And yes, they will have a bunch of batteries there, and I prefer them there than in cars, decreasing the range. Just like there's a bunch of gas right now in those gas stations, then there will be batteries stacked up and maybe even helping the grid, though that is not my concern at all right now. Secondly, this is where, remember how Trump was saying how this, electric cars are twice as expensive? But that's the thing. We shouldn't be giving examples of a car that is twice as expensive, right? You just mentioned Lucid Air. Yes, Lucid Air charges in 16 minutes, I believe, 10 to 80 or 20 to 80. Which, first of all, you have to pay $160,000 to get that, or even $100,000 to get that. That's not realistic. But to me, 16 minutes is still 14 minutes longer than I can gas my car. And it's way too much time now. And it is if I'm paying $160,000. The common folk cars that I drive myself here, ID4, I'm sorry, I was just charging yesterday 45 minutes.
Yeah, and that's today. If you drove an EV 13 years ago when I did, it was 4 hours. They keep charging is getting faster and faster and faster. And the fact that the Lucid Air is $140,000, that's not the charging rate isn't what drove up the price on that car. It's everything else, and the fact that it has a huge battery, which is a part of why it can charge faster. But that technology is trickling down. The Kia EV6, the Hyundai Ioniq 5, they both charge 10 to 80% in 18 minutes. So and those vehicles are in the $40,000. We're going to have $25,000 EVs that charge to 80% in under 20 minutes in a couple of years. So the fact that EV fast charging is happening is getting so much faster so quickly, it's making battery swap, in my opinion, obsolete before it ever even takes off. If we could never get to this high speed charging, then I would agree with you. But look at what GM's doing with Ultium. It charges at over 300 kilowatt. We're not going to need battery swap, Alex, in my opinion.
Well, okay, I think you're missing a couple of points. First of all, I recently interviewed the CEO of the QuantumScape, right? Probably the most promising technology right now for fast charging with solid-state batteries. And he told me that still it's going to come down to probably 10 minutes of charging instead of 20 or so forth. It's still going to be nowhere near 2 minutes that the gassing a car or the battery swap takes. That's number one. Number two, there are other benefits. And by the way, I'm just against hauling an 80 or 100 kilowatt hour battery when you only need 5, 10, 20 kilowatts on daily basis. That's, to me, is a waste of the battery itself, and obviously it adds huge weight to the car. Without 80% of the battery that it doesn't need most of the time, it would go even further on that tiny little 20 kilowatt hour battery that I'm proposing the modules would be at. So that's just number one. Number two, there are other benefits to battery swap, right? So first of all, your battery will be much cheaper to own or lease. Right now you have to pay for the entire battery right up front. You won't have to do it with a battery swap. You can pay for the smaller battery, probably, $30, $40 a month. And then when you go on the road trip, then you may maybe pay $40 a weekend for a bigger battery, and then you go back.
It's going to cost more than that. It's going to cost you more. It always costs you more to rent something than to buy it overall in the long run, Alex. Somebody has to lose money. If it's going to cost you less, why wouldn't it just cost you less to buy it? But let's put that to the side for a second. I agree with you that smaller batteries are needed. We don't need to keep putting in larger and larger batteries. We're doing that now because public charging sucks and we don't have enough of it. Once we have ubiquitous high-speed DC fast charging all over the place, like you're talking about putting battery swap stations all over the place. If we had superchargers and DC fast chargers, ultra high-speed ones everywhere, we could have smaller battery packs. Don't forget, most people, at least the people that live in a private residence, are very rarely going to use public charging infrastructure. For those people, it would make no sense to get a battery swap, because every night they come home and plug in. But yes, the people that live in apartments that can't charge at home, even though I believe it's going to take some time, but even apartment buildings are going to have parking, charging, on-street parking. There's going to be charging stations everywhere. It's going to take us some time, but we're going to get there. I just feel like, the battery swap is solving a problem that we have today, but that problem is going to go away over the course of the next decade with ubiquitous high-speed charging, with faster charging EVs, we'll be able to get smaller batteries. I've said this on your show more than once, that I think once we have ubiquitous high-speed DC fast charging, we're going to start seeing the range on EVs get lower and smaller batteries, because if it's really easy to plug in 10 minutes, get to 80%, on a road trip, then you don't need that big battery anymore. Honestly, I think you're looking at today's landscape and saying, yeah, battery swap would be great, but not seeing that in 10 years, it's going to be obsolete. We won't need it.
All right, let's take a quick comment here from Paul. He says, I don't think 2 minutes is realistic for a battery swap. Well, Paul, I hate to tell you this, that's already happening. And out of the two of us, the only person who've experienced battery swap with Neo is Tom, and that was a few years ago, and it was already, I believe, like 5 minutes. But now 6 minutes, but now they've gotten down to about 2, maybe 3 minutes. I believe CATL is also targeting 2 minutes. So no, it's happening now. We're gonna take this comment, not even a question, from Mark, who says, Alex is dumb sometimes. I love it when people who watched a couple of YouTube videos think that they're better experts than somebody who's been doing it for over a decade and visits the factories and gets into the prototypes. But okay, I'll entertain this idea, because he's kind of saying at the end, EV charge at night, not during the day. No, Mark, sweetheart, you got to understand how the word goes around. You can't just charge at night. Yes, if you're just a regular family, sure, you can charge at night. But if you're running a business, if you're an Uber driver, you kind of have to charge during the day. Not everyone's like you, Mark. People work and they have different businesses and they have different schedules and they have different needs. So no, not everybody can charge at night. I will introduce you to a lot of people that will tell you that they have to charge during the day. And I just don't understand why you think that the smarter way of looking at it is to simplify things to what your life is like. Tom, I'm sure we can talk for hours. I mean, I know we can talk for hours, but all I wanted was to not talk politics, talk electric cars, have a couple of different opinions, and have the audience participate. And I think I've accomplished all of this. And we're going to add with Justin, who was willing to pay $5 just to say that he agrees with Tom. I don't think people are aware you're not in the witness protection program. That's actually your name. But thank you for once again hanging out with me. And if people have not had enough of you after this hour, you'll be back on this channel on Sunday. You also have your own channel. I already put a link in the description of this video. All right, it's always great to have Tom. Honestly, one of the best journalists and people that I know personally. It's always fun to have him. He'll be back on Sunday, because I didn't feature him on Sunday because, as you know, I had a big Rivian, being banned from Rivian video, and Jehu Garcia was actually my guest by accident almost. So, all right, I'm looking forward to all of your comments. Other than that, see you guys next time, and remember to stay charged.